This is Brad Redford of the Be Different podcast, downtown Cincinnati, Ohio. We got Greg Witcher, Nick Given in the building as always, but we have a special guest coming in for an Unplugged interview from Indianapolis. That is Kent Sterling. Kent Sterling of CBS Sports 1430, host of the Kent Sterling Show. The show is weekday from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock. You can find Kent doing his thing there live every single day, and you can also go to kentsterling.com. And Kent, my favorite part about kentsterling.com is Breakfast with Kent. That is my favorite video that you have. Where did you come up with that?
You know, I'm not very good at video, and I wasn't very good at it. And so the only way I get better at stuff is doing it all the time. And so I decided to do this about 3 years ago when I got into the kind of performance side of radio instead of management. People would invite me on TV, to talk on Sunday night about stuff. And I wasn't very good at it, and I wasn't comfortable with it. So I thought, you know what, I need to get like a bunch of reps and kind of get to that 10,000 hours thing and develop some mastery of it. And so that's kind of what this is. I needed to get better, and this is the only way I do it.
Yeah, so you've been a long time, you're a Chicago native. You lived in Indy now for over 20 years, and you've been in the media business for pretty much your whole professional career since getting done at Indiana University. What drew you to the media business? And, man, it has truly changed a lot, I'm sure. My dad was in media for about 25 years, so I'm familiar with his thoughts on this topic, but I'm just curious how initially you got into it and, the biggest changes that you have kind of seen in the industry.
Well, I kind of kept getting offered jobs in it. And so I'd do it, and then it didn't pay a lot. So I'd kind of wander out and go do something else, but nothing was quite as fun. And I thought somebody's got to be able to make money doing this. And so let's figure out how to do that instead of try to figure out how to be good at something where I can make money. How about I figure out how to make money in something I'm pretty good at? And I wanted to get into the performance side of it, but wound up getting promoted into management and got pretty good at that. But management in radio, management in media is kind of a rocky terrain. And it's not an easy place to exist well. And so in 2010, I got fired from my position as program director at 1070 The Fan and WIBC in Indianapolis. And I thought, you know what? I'm pushing 50. It's time for me to go do what I love and try to figure out how to do that. And that's kind of performance. And that's something I've kind of been sort of dug into ever since.
And then shifting from management to now what you do, I mean, you're super high energy. You're constantly putting out content. But where do you discover your brand? And you think about media and the guys who get like those headlines, they get the hits. You think about like the Stephen A. Smiths, the Skip Baylesses, who now they get paid off of giving you one-liners and they get paid off of trolling. So how do you find your own personal brand, amongst a media market against guys like that?
The thing that I've always learned and the thing that I've always taught is that to be good at this and to be successful at it, you have to be four different things. You have to be authentic, you have to be relevant, fun, and innovative. And that doesn't really fit with this hot take world of Stephen A. and Skip and those guys. And so I don't do it. I say what I believe, and I believe what I say, and I try to make the show as close to a perfect reflection of kind of my belief system and my, I don't know, I've always kind of been ADD, and so we bounce around a lot. And I just try to have it be a perfect depiction every day of who I am and what I do, and trust that either that is going to carry me to success or not. Awesome. Because I've never known anybody in media who was themselves. I've never known anybody in media who was really successful who wasn't themselves. And conversely, I think it's just impossible to do it over a long period of time and be successful at it without being absolutely who you are and working really hard at it. Hard work is a great point of differentiation in any business, and especially in media, I think, because in media, like, you can get away with being a lazy ass for a while. And you can find your way to success through sort of odd means, and but it's not going to last. And I wanted to build something that lasted, and I wanted to build something that is a credit to media, and not really a throwback, but kind of one of those kind of a show where people can trust they're getting the real deal from somebody, especially at this time where I think ESPN and Fox Sports 1 in particular kind of has fallen into that trench where it's not about reality and it's not about being real. It's about, just throwing hot takes at a wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah, I think it's disappointing for everybody. I mean, your casual fan is just going to see those hot takes, and that's what they're going to stick to. And I still think there is a place for, what you're talking about, more true, more authentic people in the business. So that's awesome. Do you take anything away from anybody specifically? Is there anybody throughout the years when you were growing up, you're like, man, I want to, take a piece of that person and do that on my own? Or now are you kind of at a place where you're just more focused on, what you do and building your content?
Yeah, I grew up with WGN radio in Chicago and then the Score in Chicago and WMAQ, and worked at WGN and WMAQ, and I know kind of the way those places operated, and I try to be a little bit like that. Now, after 2010, when I got fired at Emmis, for a couple of years, I went to St. Louis and I managed 101 ESPN, which is like the market leader in St. Louis as a sports talk station. It's a terrific station. And what I inherited from a guy named Jason Barrett was really, really good. And they did stuff different. They didn't take calls. They relied on the performers and the hosts. And it was, I really tried to bring to Indianapolis a little of what that station is, and a little of what it was. Those guys really worked exceptionally hard and never took calls, and so I don't take calls. I think it's just wrong to take calls. I think it's lazy. I think that, taking calls, and I've seen it a million times myself, guys will just say, well, we got an open segment coming up. Oh, let's just take some calls. Like, this is a viable way to fill 15 minutes. And really what it does is waste the time of the callers who are going to sit on hold maybe forever and never get on. But if they do get on, they're going to get about 40 seconds in. And the host is going to get tired of what they have to say, and they're going to move on. The callers get frustrated. The listeners get frustrated. The host gets a little bit frustrated. So why get into that? And I try to look at it kind of like a stand-up comic. He wouldn't bring an audience member onto the stage to tell a joke. Why, as a radio host, am I going to invite some lunatic with a phone to just because he's got a phone and a little bit of time on his hands to hijack my show and kind of do what he wants and waste the time of listeners? And so I try to be as respectful with listeners as I can possibly be and with their time, and make sure that every time they listen to the show, they get something good out of it.
So, but you're filling 3 hours of space, live, Monday through Friday. So do you have like a set amount of time that you put aside to prepare for it? Is it 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours to prepare for those segments? And you're going over, similar teams every day, for the most part too. You're doing the Indiana topics, but you're doing some national as well. So do you set aside a certain amount of time to prepare for each show?
I try to make sure, really, it's from the time I wake up until the time I go to bed. I'm either watching sports, I'm thinking about sports, I'm reading about sports. Everything that I do, almost literally, winds up being on display from 3 to 6 every day. My wife loves sports, so that's a good thing. But it's really, my life is kind of like that show prep, and I love it. I love sports, and my son played college basketball, and you and he have a lot of common friends, and what I want to do, the great things that came to you as you played at Xavier, as Ryan played at Loyola, you guys learned a whole lot about life. So while we talk about sports, I also try to talk about those things that you guys learned about work ethic, about facing adversity, and I know you've faced a tremendous adversity and come through it. And it's really and witnessed others do the same. A mutual friend of ours, Joe Hughes, as he played and graduated from Xavier, he went through a cancer thing. And, I think that what you guys have gone through in sports, as people talk about college basketball and kind of the ills of college basketball and how college basketball has got to be fixed, I think that people ignore all the great stuff that comes from college basketball and playing collegiate sports that people who haven't been inside it just kind of don't understand. I try to bring that to it. And, but really what I do is try to make sure that every time somebody turns on the radio, they get something good out of the show, whether it's funny, whether it's kind of, something that makes them think a little bit, curiosity, something a little bit different, because I think that people from radio now, as management in radio has become more stressed and maybe a little bit lazier, it's allowed talent to become lazier, and it's made the medium a lot less special. And as a result, I just want to take whatever time I've got from 3 to 6 and the time outside that to plow into what I do from 3 to 6 and make sure it's something that's a little bit unique.
Yeah, and you talk about, at the college level, a big topic on this show, and really, everybody in the industry at some level is talking about, should college players be paid, right? We've seen Jalen Rose, Jay Williams, talk about, players should boycott the Final Four, boycott games, boycott practices. I don't believe that's something that you believe in. What would you say to those guys?
Well, what I'd say to those guys is, where were you when you were playing? If you think that players ought to boycott the Final Four, why didn't you give up your special experience in the Final Four when you had that opportunity? What were you doing playing in that thing? And why didn't, to me, it's entirely hypocritical for somebody who's taken part and reaped the benefits of participating in an event to call for a boycott of that same event. I mean, where would Jalen Rose be without the experience he had at Michigan? If he wasn't part of the Fab Five, we wouldn't know who he is. He wasn't an NBA All-Star. He wasn't a guy. He had a long career, and it was a successful career in the NBA, but it wasn't a great career in the NBA. And if he had relied on his NBA credentials to get on ESPN, they would have laughed at him. But being a member of the Fab Five and kind of that cultural iconic moment that the Fab Five sort of presented to us, and what he represented within it is kind of the credential that puts him on TV and allows him to make the kind of jack that he is. Same thing with Jay. And, he had virtually no NBA career. Without playing at Duke, we don't even know who Jay Williams is. So these guys getting on camera and calling for people to boycott something is entirely, I think, hypocritical at best. And as far as paying guys, look, you know what? I got no problem with the amateur philosophy of college basketball. But what I do mind, I don't like it when your college coach, Chris Mack, is going to get $4 million a year over the next 7 years for coaching basketball at Louisville. That is entirely too much money for somebody who is going to coach amateurs at an educational institution the game of basketball. It doesn't make sense, but money is coming over the transom so damn fast they can't count it, and they got to spend it on something. And so it's administrators, it's coaches, everybody. These hogs are at the trough, and the only people who aren't at the trough are the players. And so one of two things has got to happen. They've either got to pull the plug on shoe money and that kind of revenue from collegiate athletics and say, you know what, we are about amateurs, and so we're not going to take all this shoe money. Louisville gets $16 million a year from Adidas. That's a lot of money. Where are you going to spend all that money? The college is crying poor. I think that's hypocritical. I think, Mark Emmert saying that the kids don't deserve some kind of level of compensation, I think that that's ridiculous. One of two things has got to happen. Like I said, either you got to unplug the revenue or you've got to control your expenses. And really what you've got to do is both. I think the coaches ought to be paid like professors. I think that administrators like ADs ought to be paid like deans of a department. And I think that as people kind of, try to fill the trough with food, you got to cut off that supply, because if you don't, you're going to spend it on something. And that something is generally the people in charge who are generating that revenue, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, the friction, I think, is what, bothers me. And, a lot of your points, those are great points that could definitely work and help transition, college sports, and get to a better place. One thing that I've talked about with, a lot of former players as well, it just feels like there's a disconnect from, the guys who are at top of the NCAA, coaches and players. How do we get to a point where it feels like it's a mutual conversation and not the NCAA and the coaches against the players, or vice versa? And, I think the NBA has done a good job in, allowing those NBA players to have a voice, and the NFL not so much, right? Roger Goodell's kind of seen as being in a different space than the players. I mean, I would love somehow for the NCAA to make the players feel like they have some sort of voice in this, and really take a look at, as you mentioned, coaches getting millions and millions of dollars to coach amateur players. It just seems so inflated, and the money has become so big, especially over the last 10 to 15 years. How can we get to a place where everyone feels like they're benefiting? Because college basketball is a great game. You do not want to see it go away. There's so many positives that come out of this, from a fan standpoint, to alumni being excited about their programs, and it's awesome for the players, and it's a great spectacle. But I would love to see more willingness on the part of the NCAA, and coaches to willingly talk about these issues, and make the players feel like they're maybe a part of these decisions as well.
You know what? In order to do that, guys are going to have to say, well, geez, you know what? I do make too much money. And I have yet to hear a guy say that nobody puts those words together like that. And I know guys who've worked with Mark Emmert, the president of the NCAA. And the mistake that Mark Emmert made is he kind of came into the position like a bull in a china shop and tried to reform very quickly college athletics over the top of the collegiate presidents and the athletic directors, and he was rebuffed strongly in a way where he learned very, very quickly that he's not the boss. It's the college presidents, it's the conference presidents, it's the athletic directors who determine kind of the course of collegiate athletics, and they are not going to stand in the way of money coming into their institutions. They're not going to, in a principled way, stand up and say, this is what we need to be, and we need to be a little less greedy. That just doesn't work. And so I feel on one level, I kind of feel bad for Mark Emmert, because he's become the poster child of all that is seen to be evil about college athletics and kind of usury about college athletics. And it's really not, that's not the way he's wired. That's not the way he wants to see it done. But it's not the NCAA that runs collegiate athletics. It's the universities that run the NCAA that runs collegiate athletics. And because of that, you've got college presidents who are never, ever, ever going to, raise their hands and say, yes, we've got to figure out how to do this in a way where we take less money and we spend less money.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting, off season now that there's no, games to worry about. That's where when you had the FBI investigation happen in the fall, and everything came out over, the couple of weeks leading up to regular season games starting. And then it was all of a sudden like, well, let's forget about the FBI. We got games to talk about. We got players on the court. We got to hit practices. And that's been the topic of conversation. Now that Villanova won the national title, there's none of that to think about. Now the topic is going to shift towards, the conversation that we're having right now. So I'm interested to see, how quickly questions are brought up, and if anything at all will be done by the NCAA in this offseason.
I think one thing that's really interesting to me is that Rhode Island almost hired Rick Pitino. The AD and Pitino were kind of down the road putting together the framework for a deal, and the president of the university came in and said, no. If the president of the university doesn't kind of grow a set, all of a sudden you've got this guy who's brought nothing but shame over the last 4 years to the University of Louisville through first, the prostitution ring that was kind of provided to recruits and to players through Andre McGee as the director of basketball operations. And then this latest thing where Bruce Bowen, his family was supposed to get $100,000 from Adidas. This is a guy who's crossed the line again and again and again and again. And because he's a winning coach, he keeps getting interest in jobs. This one from Rhode Island. And you can see that these guys, they're not about doing what's right. They're about winning. And I've heard coaches say it again and again and again. The one thing you don't want to get fired for is losing. Never get fired for losing. Everything else, look at Bruce Pearl down in Auburn. How many times has Bruce Pearl kind of chosen to do the wrong thing and violate NCAA rules, or at least get into the very gray areas of NCAA rules? And there he is in Auburn making a whole lot of jack, coaching a whole lot of kids. Somehow or another, the rule book, the rules that are kind of seem to be, I guess from my perspective, so pious and so convoluted and complicated. It's got to be simplified, and either you allow coaches and shoe companies the kind of access to players and the kind of access, I guess, players access to agents, players access to the shoe guys, players access to shoe money. There's no way to control it. So what are you going to do? Either you codify it and you allow it, or you kind of, you stand like Kevin Bacon on the streets of Faber in Animal House and say all is well as the crowd rushes over the top of you and flattens you, like some cartoon character. Either the rules have got to start making sense, or they've got to do away with them. And I think that's kind of where we've gotten. And I think we're going to see an interesting thing this fall as the Jeffrey Kessler lawsuit is heard by Claudia Wilkin, and that is going to, I think, kind of replay college basketball and college athletics as we know it.
Yeah, well, and right now it just is at the top. It's pretty much win, and that's going to cure all. So even a guy like Rick Pitino, who has won but done things the wrong way, obviously, and it's very public for so many years, for him to even be in a conversation at a collegiate level, to still be a head coach is amazing to me. Why are these guys allowed to come back? Why can't they coach at the professional level? Why do they have to come back to college basketball? I mean, you're recruiting kids, as young as 14, 15 years old. In many ways, coaches are developing, the guys that they're recruiting into young men at their university. And,
Yep.
You still have Bruce Pearl at it. In Calipari, and I know he hasn't been caught in recent years, but he's had his issues as well. I just don't understand why they need to continue to be in conversations at this level. There's a lot of well-deserving coaches out there, and the only reason that Pitino's even in conversation at this point is because he's a big name. So in some ways, I think that's a shame on the school too that they would even allow that conversation to continue.
Absolutely, no question about it. The duplicity isn't just within the athletic directors and within the coaches. It goes all the way up the power chain of the universities to the presidents. And while we talk about those, and we're right to, guys who cheat are wrong, and guys who use kids, to feather their own nest, wrong. At least we got, a place like your alma mater who made a great hire over the weekend in elevating Travis Steele. Travis Steele is a good guy who's paid his dues, has always wanted to be a coach for all the right reasons. So Xavier, Butler, I would throw into that mix. I think Villanova with Jay Wright. Nobody knew who Jay Wright was when he came from Hofstra to Villanova. Some guys do it right, some schools do. And I think with all the energy we use in castigating those kind of bad actors, I think we need to kind of counter that with some talk about the good. And I'm really happy that Xavier made the decision they did with Travis, because I like Travis. Travis was an assistant basketball coach at Ben Davis High School when he was a student at Butler. He helped the AAU program that my son played for, and really, really good dude. And I couldn't be happier for Xavier making a really good decision.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it in the interview because I know you talked with Coach Steele after the decision was made about how the Big East continues to hire good guys, and I think that's a
Yeah.
big reason why they're having so much success. And the Big East isn't built off of one and done players; it's built off of really good prospects, but guys that are staying 3 and 4 years. And obviously worked out for Villanova. That has that really unique mix of talented older players with a guy like Omari Spellman, who's a freshman, DiVincenzo, a redshirt sophomore. And so the Big East and Villanova, I think, are kind of carrying the torch right now for guys that want to stay and play college basketball for more than just 1 year.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think the Big East does stuff right, and I think that there are other conferences who do. They just aren't as successful at it. And then you've got some conferences like the SEC that are just kind of, there's a lot of moral turpitude within the SEC. Maybe that casts too wide a net, but I think it's by and large accurate. And it's about coaches, it's about big business rather than education. And I think the Big East does a great job of kind of walking that fine line where business is respected, but it's about the education of the individuals. And I'm a little bit more familiar with Butler than I am with Xavier, but I know that when somebody like Andrew Smith dies or they experience adversity, everybody within that family going back, like forever, when Joel Cornette died, they had a funeral or at least a service at Hinkle Fieldhouse, and people connected to Butler basketball back generations came together as a family to mourn that loss. And you just don't see that everywhere. And I think within the Big East, you've got those familial schools and those familial programs that really kind of reveal what can be with college basketball rather than what should be, if that makes sense. I mean, if you could go into the SEC and correct stuff, we could, it'd take 20 years to get the SEC to be kind of what the Big East is. And the Big East, I think, is kind of a shining example, both on the court and off, as to how college basketball ought to work.
Awesome. And lastly, before I get you out of here, because I know you got a busy day ahead of you, I want to get your thoughts on Indiana. You're a graduate from Indiana, 1986, I believe, and that was
Nice.
when Bobby Knight was still the coach, right? Bobby Knight was still there, and did Indiana? Was that the year Keith Smart hit the 2 shots against Syracuse in the national title game?
That was the year before.
Okay.
The 86 year was the season on the brink that John Feinstein wrote about, and. The thing about Bob Knight, they've got this Last Days of Night thing that ESPN's putting out, and it's debuting tonight at a screening here in Indianapolis. But Bob Knight is one of those more, he's really controversial, but I think that the closer you get to Bloomington, the more you kind of realize the good that he did in conjunction with the bad. There was a whole lot of bad, and the bad's gotten all the press. We don't talk a whole lot about the good. He taught this entire state of Indiana kind of the game of basketball. And if you look at kids coming from Indiana, a lot of times they know how to play at a different level. And I think that that's kind of Bob Knight's legacy, as well as, all the nonsense, all the, kicking a kid in the shin, headbutting Sharon Wilkerson, all the nuttiness, the comments about rape. He was a knucklehead, and he was self-indulgent and very arrogant, and his hubris wound up doing him in. But I think in the state of Indiana, people are still kind of pulled in both directions with Bob Knight. There was good, there was bad. The current state of Indiana basketball is, I think, driven kind of by Bob Knight's arrogance, because that culture was not like the culture at Xavier, the culture at Butler. That culture has continued. Xavier had Pete Gillen, and then Skip Prosser, and then Thad, and you got to Sean, and then Chris. And it was always kind of within that family or a similar family to further the Xavier culture. And Indiana was in a position to do that with Bob Knight, a great coaching tree from Bob Knight, but nobody wants to hire the Knight tree because it kind of evokes Knight, and nobody wants to do that. And I think that's Knight's saddest legacy, is that Indiana continues to have to hire from outside the family, go get a guy like Tom Crean or now Archie Miller, who I think is going to wind up being more successful than Tom and maybe kind of replate a positive Indiana-esque culture. But I think that his saddest legacy is that a guy like Dan Dockich or a guy like Steve Alford or Mike Woodson, any of the guys who played for Knight, haven't been allowed to come back and coach at Indiana. I think that that's a shame because the culture of fundamentals at Indiana and the culture of guys getting degrees, graduating, being good actors at Indiana and in Bloomington was kind of derailed. And it wasn't the fault of the president of the university or the athletic director. It was Knight's own fault, and it continues to be 17 and a half years later.
Do you feel that the Indiana community is accepting Archie Miller? And I mean, obviously, they didn't have a great team this year. They seemed to improve a little bit as the year went on, especially I think defensively. But are expectations high with Archie, and are the fans starting to get behind him and believe that him and his staff are the right culture?
I think so to an extent. I mean, he's being given kind of some slack in that rope to go ahead and build what he needs to build, and it looked more like Indiana this year, and that made fans feel good. That defense was a little more Indiana-esque. We understand pack line defense. Whatever it was that Tom Crean was doing schematically, people in Indiana never got either on the offensive or the defensive end, and as a result, there was a disconnect. I think that was just never going to be, regardless of the level of success, that disconnect was never going to be broached. And with Archie, it's a little bit different, but there's still, fans here are kind of nutty, and they're different sects of fans. They're the Bob Knight kind of, traditionalists. There are more young people who just want wins, and they don't care about all the other stuff. And if you had to cheat to get it, cheating's okay. And guys getting degrees, well, that's okay. But what we really want is to win. There are a bunch of different facets of fans. And one thing, I went to New Albany High School, and in New Albany in southern Indiana, there's a kid down there named Romeo Langford. And Romeo's really, really good and kind of a transcendental figure in southern Indiana basketball. And he's come down to three teams or three programs, and it's going to be Indiana, Vanderbilt, or Kansas. And I think Indiana fans are way too invested in where a 17 or 18-year-old is going to decide to go to college. This is just a kid deciding where he's going to go prior to likely playing in the NBA. And I think we ought to look at it through that prism instead of, hey, if Romeo comes, we hang a banner. That's a lot of weight to put on an 18-year-old, and I think it's completely unnecessary and unjust.
Yeah, I agree, but regardless, I think the Indiana faithful will be praying night and morning to try and get Romeo Langford in the community there. So
that's true, and you can't really blame him. I mean, he's a great kid, and I've gotten to know him, and he and his family are good actors, and the kid's just kind of a solid citizen, and he signs, until the line goes away at the end of every game, road and away, and he's a complete stoic. There's no chest thumping. There's none of the theatrics that accompanies, outstanding basketball these days, and that kind of individualistic sort of mentality of basketball. And so people at Indiana, I think they want Romeo for a whole lot of reasons. But, at the end of the day, he's a kid, and he's going to make the best decision for him. And maybe it's just a matter of where he felt a great vibe, whether it's Bloomington, Nashville, or Lawrence.
Absolutely. So, well, Kent, you are the man. I kept you a little longer than I told you, but you're saying so much good stuff. I had to keep you on. I enjoy talking with you whenever I get the opportunity.
Oh, no worries. It was fun. I enjoyed it, Brad. Thanks.
All right, Kent, thank you so much. That is Kent Sterling of CBS Sports 1430, host of the Kent Sterling Show. Be sure to catch him. Go to his website, kentsterling.com, and that is it for the Be Different podcast.